Hello. Thank you all for coming. I'm Lynn Tomaszewski. I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs here at Cranbrook Academy of Art. Tonight, we are having the third lecture in our Academy-wide lecture series, and we are thrilled to welcome Leonard Suryajaya. I have been practicing that all day, to the Academy. But before I introduce Leonard, I want to invite you to join us for the final fall lecture, which will happen December 5th, and we're going to invite Jomo Tauriku to the Academy. This year's lecture series is sponsored by comes to us from the generosity of the Gilbert Family Foundation, so we really like to thank them for that. So, without further ado, Leonard Suryajaya was born in Indonesia and is a Chicago-based artist. He received his MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and a BA and a BFA from California State University, Fullerton. Leonard creates lush, complicated, staged photographs, video, performance, and installation work that test the boundaries of intimacy, community, and family. Working from his upbringing as an Indonesian citizen of Chinese descent, as a Buddhist, educated in Christian schools in a Muslim-majority country, and now living in the United States, his work uses everyday gestures to make visible both the individual experience as well as how complicated external forces like history, culture, religion, and exile imprint on both the individual and their communities. I had the pleasure of meeting Leonard and experiencing his work during a studio visit with him while he was a graduate student at SAIC. I remember this as one of the best studio visits I've ever been part of, not because I was there, because Leonard sort of welcomed us into this chock-full room. I remember wallpaper and photographs and video, and it was a lot walking in, and we had a very illustrious jury, and I think we maybe had enough time as a group to introduce ourselves, and then Leonard just swept us into his world, his narrative. He really took over, and we all kind of walked out of there, and needless to say, he won one of the best awards at SAIC, the Edis Prize. So I've never hesitated that he would be back here again. So Leonard's photographs are held in major institutions, including the Art Institute of Chicago, the Museum of Contemporary Photography, the Block Museum. His work has been featured in numerous international exhibitions at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, Banaka Museum in Greece, Photo Museum Winterthur in Switzerland, the National Library in Singapore, Esker Foundation in Canada, and Aperture Gallery in New York. He's received awards from prestigious institutions like the Guggenheim Fellowship, Artado Awards, DCASE Esteemed Artist Award, Aaron Sisklin Foundation Award, and the Robin Gerard Foundation Fellowship. A very impressive list. And Leonard said to me this morning, I just feel like now I'm finally getting some momentum. So I can't wait to see where the momentum will take him next. So please help me welcome Leonard to the Academy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for welcoming me here, and I'm so excited to share my work with all of you.
This time is yours. This time is mine. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf waters. This time was meant for you and me.
We all live in countless versions of ourselves across the universe. There's the you seen through your parents' eyes, the you your lover knows, the you in the gaze of strangers, and the you shaped by the eyes of society, the government, and even the vast anonymous realm of the internet. Each perspective forms a thread in a complex, interconnected web all contributing to the shifting image of who you truly are. These reflections, in turn, shape how you see yourself and how you seek out love, trust, and comfort. It would be nice if all these different versions of you could come together to form a cohesive, celebrated identity. But for many of us, especially those who exist on the margins, that's not always the case. As a persecuted minority in my home country and now an immigrant in the US, my experience of self has often been tangled with contradictions, hostility, and the sting of being diminished by others. I've been in America for 18 years now, and I've tried everything to fit in. I've ironed out my accent, worked on sounding more American. I even eat sandwiches and cold salad. I've updated my wardrobe to match the American look, picked up Western hobbies like working out, triathlons, and marathons. But despite all that effort, I can't seem to escape the one version of me that others see, the one defined solely by my race. A few days before Halloween, about 3 weeks ago, I was walking with my partner through a state park in Oregon. We reached a fork in the trail, and as we headed left, I noticed a couple coming towards us from the other path. At first, I thought he was speaking in tongues, but then I realized he was calling me the Asian C word and the Asian G word. Honestly, my first thought was, well, you missed the most obvious one, bitch. British cigarette. But in that moment, I didn't get riled up. I've been there before. I knew better than to escalate. So I kept quiet, kept walking while his words echoed behind me, repeated like some sad, misguided chant seeking for some sort of validation. But then, as I walked on, I couldn't help but think, how would the ancestors of those who first settled in America feel if they could see what their descendants have become? Would they feel proud of what their bloodlines have built? Or would they be shocked to learn that some of their own kin now see me or anyone who doesn't fit their narrow idea of American as a threat or less than? After all, their ancestors were once immigrants too, struggling to carve out a place in this land, and yet, somewhere along the way, some have forgotten that. Is the guy who yelled those slurs really so disconnected from his own history that he's forgotten his people came from somewhere too? That they too had to fight to belong here. In trying to define what it means to be American, has he lost sight of the very essence of what this country, a place built by people who were never really home until they made it their own? It raises a bigger question. What do we lose when we forget our shared history, the struggles of those who came before us? When does a person become so blinded by their own privilege that they forget the price others paid just to have a place at the table? Ultimately, who am I kidding? These people killed and erased others to claim a place for themselves. Am I wrong to feel pessimistic about being small? Despite my best effort and hopeful outlook, I'm always reminded again that I'm not fully welcome. The body of work that I'm showing you right now was made earlier this year in August through the Route 127 photographing the world's longest yard sale, and it was published on the New Yorker magazine. And then this bitch, Susanna, I don't know how else to interpret her concern other than her being xenophobic and racist. Because if she is that smart as she is in using the word denigrate twice, she could clearly read that these 4 women are family, a mom and 3 of her daughters. But to her, it's easier to blame it on me. But my question is, who are we really if we forget where we come from? And how do we hold on to the humanity of others when we've forgotten our own? Or when our own humanity is oppressed by others? That is the fundamental question that becomes the fuel in my art practice. This question came early to me in my childhood as a second-generation Chinese Indonesian. Growing up in Indonesia, I witnessed constant cultural and political instabilities. As an ethnic Chinese minority, I was considered a second-class citizen. I had a special ID card to go along with the stories of persecution and assimilation I inherited. I was raised in a Buddhist household, educated in Christian schools in the largest Muslim majority country in the world. On top of it all, the discovery of my queerness in such conservative setting prompted the desire to find a place where I could truly call home. Growing up watching American TV shows and movies, I moved to America when I turned 18 to pursue a better life and higher education. To be honest, one aspect of the American culture that I found perplexing when I first came here is the act of volunteering one's own opinion. Quite honestly, this is still quite unnatural for me because I was brought up with the notion that you don't freely express your opinion unless asked. I guess this was my initial interest and draw towards art making. I realized I can communicate without using words. Through an absence of physical and verbal affection in my upbringing, I first used the visual medium to produce a new language of intimacy and longing. The desire for closeness, accompanied by apprehension, guides me in my exploration. I then found myself using photography as an excuse to construct a new and more privately familiar world. This photograph is the installation that Lynn saw at my studio when I was in grad school. I had wrapped a corner of my studio along with furnitures and legs. I call this piece Homeland Security, Souvenir for My Home Country with Bacon. There is a piece of raw bacon hanging in the photograph. I don't know if this pointer works. It doesn't work, but oh yeah, it does. It's right here. Yeah. I learned that photography is also a dream vessel. It's a medium where I collide my thoughts, ambitions, aspirations, and excellence with my fears, anxieties, and shortcomings. To make a photograph is to make physical these dreams and nightmares that occupy me. It's a way for me to process overwhelming information or uncertainties and transform them into something hospitable and beautiful. 주민수.
Mày.
주민수.
Mày.
Nào,
Ừ.
có cả lục con à?
Ừ.
Hoa ghê à, 좋아.
Mà blokin.
Lu bố mẹ.
Không sao nè.
Mới này chạy.
Ya, biasa aja.
Lu mẹ ơi.
Ngapain mama?
Jadi yang tua ni?
Mau blokin lah. Penting lu tuh pingin mahal lo. Daripada lu kaki jalan tua.
Terus?
Mana jangan?
Lalu kalau itu ikut ni?
Boleh mabukin, mabuk. Okay?
Juminsu.
Okay? Mana jangan?
Lu bawa ni ya? Juminsu.
Itu biasa lah.
Yang tua biasa ya?
Okay?
快
Mana jangan?
啦！yang tua biasa.
Mana jangan?
Lu bố mẹ.
Ngapain mama? Tuh yakin lu pingin tuh boleh. Mesti lu macam jalan tua. Pulang kalau.
Waktu bawa IC kok.
Ya memang, tapi kan bosong mah kaki jalan tua.
Lu paiseh.
Bu?
Kok aneh khỏi con bùa.
Itu memang bu.
Juminsu bùa.
Itu memang bu, itu harus paisi.
Apa lu percaya?
Cai, bu lah wah. Atau bih atau bak lu.
Juminsu ya.
Oh,
Juminsu ya.
Lu tuh buat con ngoài.
Jadi,
Mana dah?
mau kalau con
Ya udah.
khỏi. Lu bố mẹ.
Ngapain mama?
Jadi yang tua?
Mana John?
Lu kok aja?
Ayah.
Kok nafsu makan lo?
Tunggu sebuah. Bintang ayah.
Mana yang saya? Lalu khỏi.
Ambil.
Sayang wow.
Sayang.
Khỏi lah. Lu con à?
Oh sayang lu.
Khỏi lah, lu con này gì?
Mày.
Please.
Sayang lu.
Thật sao?
Udah, oh mày ở đâu?
Để bố ya.
Wah sayang lu.
Anh siêu luôn. Khỏi lah. Sayang lu juga.
Oh sayang kok.
Wah tembak kalau con.
Tapi what the sayang?
Anh cho lại chạy.
Oh sayang aja.
Anh cho đi.
Sayang aja lah.
Anh cho lại chạy.
Sayang aja lah, feeling tuh.
Hah?
Sayang aja lah, masa em sayang.
Lu feeling ada hebat lah. Oh, ya udah. Bye bye.
Bye.
Khỏi lại. See you. Cheese. Khỏi lah. Lu kok how? Hả? Juminsu how? Isu kok buka con tên buka con nữa. Khỏi
Karena
lại.
lu kong lu sayang wah.
Hả?
Karena lu kong lu sayang wah.
Cậu. Mày how là lu cho how ta. Đó. Ya udah.
Ya udah bye.
Bye. Bye. Photographing my family began as a way to deal with being in the closet. Every time I went back home, I grew very suspicious that it would be my last time with my family there before they banished me. So it was my intention to fit as many things in the picture frame, just in case that would be my last time there. I soon realized that art making is more than just an outlet for me. It's a form of self-therapy, self-building, and self-actualization. It allows me to process confusing information in portions I could handle. It allows me to connect with other people and feel acknowledged. Making art is also an excuse to do something I would normally shy away from, a form of protest.
It's hard for me to do.
Why?
Because I'm more comfortable being alone. I imagine that you are too. Not that it's something that either one of us really want.
Why are we together?
Are we
Or are we? Are we?
in your bed right now? Yeah.
What are we doing?
I already told you I don't tend to ask questions like that.
So confused. I don't know.
What would you like?
For what?
How would you like to answer that question?
I don't know. What is it that we're giving towards each other?
I don't know how much of it is conscious.
What is it that you want from me?
I think I look as much at what I'd like to give to you. Support and encouragement. Confidence. In return, I don't know, inspiration, energy, support. Can't tell if you're laughing or crying.
Would you get me a green card?
I'm not opposed to it. It's too early to answer that question, I think. But I've thought about it.
In 2016, a few months after gay marriage was federally recognized, I married my partner Peter to ensure my stay in America. The green card process is tedious. As a newlywed, I was given 2-year temporary green card, and after it ended, I had to redo the whole application process and asked to document and submit proofs of marriage, work, and family to ensure my stay. The truth is, when I got married, I never told my family. I was carrying such a big burden and I found myself at loss. I came out to my sister and also my mom in 2014 during winter break from grad school. My mom told me at the time to not tell my dad. So I just thought it was better if we just never speak about it. I brought Peter to Indonesia many times. We still don't talk about it. I could tell at the time that my mom needed time. To them, he was my white American friend who's also into art making and there to help me out. He soon graduated into being my roommate. To make matters worse, as an artist who doesn't shy away from queer topics and persecution towards Chinese people in Indonesia, I can be persecuted and put in prison there. This brings up the memory of having to run away from Indonesia in 1998 when I was 9. Economic collapse and social upheaval prompted violence towards Chinese ethnic group, echoing the purge of 1965, which also targeted the Chinese community, which happened during my parents' childhood. To give a better idea of my hometown and also the history of Chinese ban in Indonesia, I want to show you a clip from The Act of Killing by Joshua Oppenheimer. This documentary came out when I was in grad school, and it was hard to watch it. Not because of its content, but I realized it was shot in my hometown. But when you watch this next clip, I also invite you to pay attention to the colors and patterns in my hometown, the busyness, because I do find a great deal of inspirations in my visual aesthetic from where I come from.
Kau ingat waktu pengganyangan Cina tahun 66? Kan daftar itu kan kalian itu ngasih daftar. Iya. Daftar apa pergi? Sepanjang jalan Sudirman itu kalau jumpa Cina anak kerjain. Jumpa Cina anak kerjain, anak tikam terus. Lupa. Ya enggak pasti ingat lah. Ada berapa puluh itu tapi banyak lah. Banyak itu Cina. Asal jumpa anak kerja, anak kerjain. Jumpa anak kerjain. Sampailah akhirnya ke Jalan Asia. Di situ ketemu anak sama calon mertua. Kan dulu anak bercewek sama Cina tuh. Calon mertua, anak ingat lagi. Jadi double perasaan anak. Ini antara ganyang Cina sama ganyang mertua. Anak tikam juga. Karena Cina juga. Masuk ke parit. Anak kasih pakai batu bata tenggelam.
When we ran away in 1998, my dad asked my other mother to stay home and acted like she was the homeowner to spare our house from being burned down or looted. My other mother, I call her, was a live-in nanny who worked with my family for 27 years. I also remember my dad telling me and my sister to never trust her. He told us, she's Muslim, she's native Indonesian, she will turn on you. And as a 9-year-old, I was just confused. To me, she was more of a parent than my father. When we ran away, that's also when my mom told me that if things were to get worse in Indonesia, she would have to send me away abroad to study. But before it gets too depressing, I'm happy to say the Chinese ban ended after that boiling point. With the changing of government, international pressure, and social reform, Chinese Indonesians were finally seen as full citizens, and Chinese culture were reconciled as part of the national cultural fabric. My family was able to return back to Indonesia, and I got to stay until I finished high school.
Song luôn. Chicago. Nggak semeraut. Selamanya. Kayaknya nggak tahu lah ya. Ayo, itu tanggung jawab di Medan kan besar. Bocok Kang Leo tanah Xiaoxing Toa Zeping rasanya mana kau bujuk kamu. Itu tanggung jawab nih tua. Wihara masih. Tuy dia macam ya. Kalau wihara senglo itu pembangunan kan lagi selesaikan urusan yang hawa iya. Saya sedih aja. Ya, at least kau mencari kau nak kau baru tu jauh. Kalau kau abang sometimes ada kan kau. Iya, mami sih sebenarnya saya kalau diskusi loh. Iya, tapi tentang demikian, kan mami gak ada teman untuk bisa diskusi. Tapi kan perlu pendapat dari lulang juga. Dan lu kalau mami masih dulu, kalau mami waktu tampuk lo loh. Iya, kadang-kadang kan pandangan kan pusing ni. Hah? Mami tu bukan pakai kalau. Mami bukan pakai kalau lah. Mami tu bu. Lu masa mencari mami pakai bukan pakai. Mami kan cuma menjaga saja. Buat cuma lah. Orang tu bu tu pakai在一起，pakai kami. Dio. Ilang si bepai lah, mami ya lu lang ho ya lu, mai tampuk emosi, ya mami cai lah, mami semua cai lah, lu lang emosi, lu lang cara, mi kalau pasti sih dapatnya dari walang juga emang, tio dan ya itu tercermin sih lu lang lo, mami masih memaklumin juga, cuman kalau mama menkelo bu kami mikir kak sabar tampo meka walang tangsi ilang actually yang cahang si mami khawatir si ane kono kadang-kadang sim tak cahong mami kan kau tu si ijak sim tang pa botang sim cai lo. Jak kadang-kadang mah saya ni kan jak tapi kan tein kan uhat sing tai biasanya si ilang jak sim tang kan ilang kalap lo.
Maksudnya
Amo ini ilang pun silang hasil kejadian kan mencelakakan lu kalau jatuh simpang jiri mengenai lu langi kami lu kalau orang Indonesia nekon si kami keruk lu lang kekayaan nekon tapi kok isi biru lu kok ya cuali iya. Không phải là抓走了，去猜路啦yang penting kita pengen kehidupan kan lang tak yakin ai upeng iu mah tio. Kalau lu sebenarnya mesti mami suka sih sabo lo. Tapi kalau ya itu lu kaki lah. Mami pun bihokong ni mikir lah, informan ni lah. Yang penting lu selalu acuan terhadap orang tua, terhadap adik, terhadap society. Lu bertanggung jawabkan terhadap saudara-saudara. Ya sudah.
Yeah, I feel like art making is really my savior because I feel like I'm pretty demented for all of the things that has happened. Through perseverance, practice, and passion, I've developed a visual language that's fantastical yet tender, bursting with colors and patterns, meanings and confusions. I employ the large format film camera, but unlike Gregory Crutzen's ambitious movie set process, my approach is more like a do-it-yourself community production of absurdist theater featuring family, friends, and community. I am the facilitator, photographer, set designer, creative director, and choreographer. The picture frame is my stage, and I fill it with humble everyday objects and subjects to find a sense of order in chaos. As an artist, I often wonder what my true calling is. What's my call of duty as an artist? I have this one life, one timeline to exercise living. Giving up doesn't seem prudent because it only solidifies the fact that I let my oppressors win over me. So, as challenging as it is at times, I believe my call of duty as an artist is to practice unconditional faith that life is worth living above all the hardship. Practicing art helps me practice unconditional self-love, that I am worthy of being alive, I am worthy of the attention, care, investment, and time from myself to progress. And through my craft, I exercise the power that I do have in transforming adversity into hospitable form to guide others' perspective on the timeline we are in and what it's like to be human. I'm not a superhero, but when I can actualize, expand, and communicate the depth of my humanity through art and communicate my perspective without words, it sure does make me, an alien in America, feel extraterrestrial. Mortality has a good way of reminding us of the purpose of living. Sad as it is to see my grandpa pass away, it was truly a moment of victory for him to die with his loved ones around him. I strive to show that family, community, and culture ground us as human beings amid the chaos and confusion of the world. This is my partner, carrying the weight of my family. I'm happy to say, especially after COVID, my mom has become open and my family accept Peter for who he is and who we are, despite still not having the conversation. Our family, our community are the training ground in which we learn how to identify our purpose and fulfill our potential. Through our desire to connect and from our pride in celebrating our individuality, we develop the skills to face the world. My work is a vision that validates multiple ways of being, connecting my home country of Indonesia and my chosen home in America. My work challenges the use of identity, family, and community as political weapons to limit, erase, and oppress our fundamental rights. No matter the complications, we are better humans when we celebrate one another's specificities. I hope when you look at my work, you are reminded to live your life to the fullest. I hope it sparks inspiration in celebrating where you come from and joy in sharing your humanity with others. Thank you.
For a couple of questions. Anybody have a question? We're taping.
Hi, Leonard. I was lucky enough to spend several months in Indonesia in the early 90s. So I'm enjoying seeing the colors and the patterns and everything you're incorporating. I'm just wondering how is your art accepted? Obviously, you're going back home. How is it accepted there now?
Yeah, I showed my work once in Jakarta, the capital city, at a photo festival, but of course they got rid of any mention of queerness in my work. And to me, it's a small victory. At least I get to share my experience of home and family. So I honestly don't mind that at all. And I also learned that it's a very American way of acceptance, being able to verbalize love and acceptance. For my family, they don't say that they love me or anything, but they would sit in my photos and be brave enough to share their face. So to me, that's something that I had to learn and respect of them. I don't make it a goal to share my work extensively in Indonesia right now because I feel like a little backstory, I'm in the process of getting naturalized as an American citizen. My interview is next month. So I feel like I needed that sense of security first before feeling comfortable sharing my work extensively in Indonesia because of the fear of what could happen to my family because they show their faces in my work. And it would be unfair if they get the brunt of the hatred towards me. So, yeah, I feel hopeful. I feel like it does require me to be courageous, but also at the same time, I want to build in separation and distance so that I can feel safe for my family. Yeah, so I feel like my cousins are accepting of me. I also learned that the best way to open someone's mind is to figure out how to speak in their language while also using humor and purposeful confusion, and also my knowledge from being in America to expand their mind. I'm not gonna go in and say, hey everyone, I'm gay, you know, because I feel like that would threaten them in a way that they don't know how to respond. So I feel like, I don't know, this is the practice that I am getting better at. And I'm thankful I can do it through art making.
You have
Yeah.
a beautiful family. It looks like they've come around and, without speaking, accepted you. And wouldn't it be nice if the rest of Indonesia thought the same way after knowing you?
Hope so. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Hi.
I have a less conceptual question. I just was wondering, once you make a photo, what do you do with all the stuff?
Oh, well, I try to be resourceful. So a lot of the times, the things that you see in the photograph belongs to the people in the photograph. For example, this is everything that my mom bought when she visited me in Chicago with my sisters. I was really stressed out seeing all of the things that she bought. So naturally, as a way to calm myself, I help her arrange all of her shopping into categories so she could just easily put it in her luggage. So I frame everything in my photograph. I bring in additional fabrics from my studio just as a way to kind of like frame. But a lot of the times, I try to utilize what is available to me where I'm at. This photograph was made earlier this year during Lunar New Year in Indonesia. So naturally, all of the flowers were gifts from people. And I had to kind of like set up the backdrop a little bit to kind of signify Lunar New Year, red, and the Year of the Dragon. And also at the time, my sister was expecting a dragon baby. And this was also when I gained the courage to ask my dad if it would be okay for him to pose in my photograph wearing a diaper. And I feel like I could get here after working with him for 10 years, photographing him in all sorts of different glorious depiction. So, yeah, a lot of the time I utilize the patterns, the fabrics that I find where I'm at. And that really, I don't know, helps me figure out how to get rid of them after I shoot, because afterwards I just fold it and then give it back to them. And then it also allows me to travel and make my studio wherever I travel and make things more fresh. Yeah, so a lot of the time, all I have to bring is my lights and light stands and my camera. And then I try to maximize what I could find in the location to help me build. Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I wanted to be mindful of the time that I didn't really speak about any technical aspect of my work, but I make photograph with 100 ISO film. So everything needs to be lit really bright. But what is great is I set the camera on the tripod and all I do is build the stage. I go back and forth in building them, and that gives me a sense of power and really like, you know, making sure I know what it is that I needed from that process of making the photograph. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I just didn't put them in because I don't want anyone to get fixated on reading the title. But something like this, I call it Baby Bump. A lot of the times the way I title them is very almost open-ended in a way to invite the viewer to kind of make up their own relationship with the work. Because I recognize I put a lot and I'm asking a lot, but also at the same time, I can't force like my narrative. And I feel like this also exemplify my experience in, being who I am, in being a minority. I don't force my way into making sure you love me, but I will work in making sure that you see different layers that I am presenting for you to pick up on whatever it is that you want. It could be the humor, it could be the color, it could be specific cultural signifiers. And like something like this, I call it Mom and Everything She Bought in America. Because that's what it is. I made this photograph earlier this year in Indonesia. I call this Dolls, but in this body of work that I'm developing now, I want to put myself in the work more now that I feel more confident and comfortable in showing myself. It was stressful. I took 2 frames and I had to climb in and out of that big jar to run back to the camera to take out the negative and reinsert it. And then at the time, my cousin's boyfriend, who is not official yet in the family, was the one who hit the shutter because he refused to be in the photo at the time. But they're getting married, so maybe next time I see them, he would be in the photograph. This I call Dad After Quarantine, because really after I saw him again after the quarantine, he was just so fixated on his phone and aquarium more than me as his son, because I realized that's how he gets his dopamine. So yeah, I usually would title my work in something that spark specificity of what it is that I am making, but also understand sometimes I don't want to just enforce one specific ways of seeing. Yeah.
Sometimes the batteries die. Hello.
Hello.
All right. Hi. You kind of answered this a little bit in your last sentence, but I notice a lot of these photos, you don't photograph yourself. You mentioned like having more confidence now. I'm wondering like how you built that confidence and like what your relationship with yourself and the camera is.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, it's just harder to operate a 4x5 film camera without me operating it. But these people have been in my work for more than, 5 years now, and some of them have been with me throughout my life. So I'm comfortable telling them, don't move. I'm gonna run back to my camera. I will make sure you're still in focus, but please don't move extensively. So I feel like I've built in that working relationship that I can kind of trust that they will stick out for me, because a lot of the times I cannot see the result right away, because I need to fly back to Chicago to process the films and then scan it. So it's really like, okay, this is an exercise in trust building as family, so please don't disappoint me. But yeah, I've been doing more of that, especially now that I'm in the process of, I guess, leaving Indonesia and becoming a naturalized American. I see the need and also the confidence to take that step in offering myself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Leonard.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much. I guess I was curious to hear a little bit more when you're thinking about maybe photographing subjects or individuals who, unlike your family, you don't have a relationship with as long of a relationship, and how you think about building trust and also a space where you can facilitate a moment for them to be captured.
Yeah, like the project that I showed in the beginning, because it was made as Peter and I were driving south from, it started in Michigan. We drove to Detroit, stayed a night, and then the next day we drove to Addison where the yard sale started. So with those work, I had to kind of figure out, okay, how do I approach my subjects? How do I invite them to be photographed? And all of them had to sign a model release. So in a split second, I have to kind of like, justify what it is that I'm doing, also build that trust. And I think through conversations, I introduce myself, I introduce what it is that I'm doing, I also introduce my process. And I think when they start seeing, the bulk of the equipment that I have, it kind of sets up that impression, oh, this is real life, this is real shit, because there are strobe lights, reflectors, camera, tripod, so they know it's legit. But I also had to show them my other works for them to like, oh, hey, this is my work. Would you want to be photographed? And so that was the way that I invited these subjects to be photographed. And these photographs, I have to work really fast. Like none of them take longer than 15 minutes. So it was really like, an Olympic in photographing. I have to really make a quick decision. Okay, what looks great? What is great in the background? What is the current natural light? How can I improve that? And how do I best pose these people? So I have to really like think fast on my feet, because we have to really figure it out. Yeah, it was like a crash course in like making photograph and making connections. And I present myself, they look at me and they clearly see that I am from somewhere else. They see that I come from the city, and they were also curious about what it is that I could do. So I have to rely on my people skill and also code switching, making sure like I don't come off as threatening. I guess that's how I convince these people to trust me with the photographs. And a lot of the time, I also like just see how they respond to me. This guy, TM, I literally thought his name was TM, but I realized, oh, that's your accent. Your name is Tim. When I saw him, he was wearing like a black t-shirt. He was very illustrious. And I was like, hey, do you want to be photographed with the things that you're selling? And then, yeah. He's so excited. And then I was like, well, do you have any other clothes to wear? Because black usually is just a waste of color in my photograph. And then he was like, yes. And then he brought up the tin hat, and he brought up this old Boy Scout uniform to wear. And of course, he was also selling these guns. And I was like, okay, bring it all together. Let's make a great photograph. And that's what we did. You know, I was nervous. I never just came up to someone while they were holding a gun and like, hey, can you pose in my photograph? Especially when I don't know how they would respond to me. But I don't know, I was driven by excitement. I was driven by wanting to succeed, and you know, I did it. Yeah, but I think I showed a little bit of the background of what this looks like. It was like, we got to this Amish fairground, and there were so many people, and I also have to make sure like I can do all of that shit. So I really have to work fast, you know, and kind of build that sense of like trust early on and invite them in like making the photograph. At that time, I just have to have that confidence in me. Like, I will apply myself, I will have the confidence, I will just work. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. In this whole body of work, I handed the shutter to the subjects. So all of these photographs were taken by themselves, the subjects in the photograph. Especially because, I think it's just a great way of sharing the love for my craft, especially because I am a newcomer to this yard sale culture. I want to make sure like I get to like share it with them and also like kind of figure out different ways or different which person gets to like take the photograph. And I had done this work before early on when I was in grad school and undergrad, but I never revisited this method of working until this year when I started including myself in the photograph again. Because when I'm in the photograph, I don't want it just to be me who take the photographs. So sometimes I hand it to my sister, my mom, my dad. And to me, it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is like a very glorious way of taking a selfie with a really cool camera and, tedious process. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that kind of answered the question.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Your still images are really obviously intentional and staged, even these. But your videos are really the opposite of that. It feels like they're the opposite. Are they scripted at all, or are you?
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just like on my phone or like a handheld video cam where I literally like, let me hand you the mic and then let's see what we talk about. Because I feel like I wanna subvert the very, formal stage quality of these photographs with that more quick and being present. And it also taught me to be like responsive in the settings that I'm in, because honestly, it also feels very elitist to just make work with a large format film camera that sometimes I miss just like wanting to flip out my phone and take something. But I feel like taking a photograph with iPhone just doesn't feel gratifying. But then I use the video format to marry both and present a more wholesome way of experiencing the space. Yeah, I think it's my way of kind of like being really uptight, but being really cool at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a question? I saw you. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. I saw you raise your hand earlier.
Thank you so much. It was a statement question, but I was just going to comment that I really enjoyed your story of your cross-cultural dialogue with the images, and I know from my own work with students of all different ages, sometimes the global world can feel very new, and I just thought it was interesting. I was looking on the Cranbrook archives to see our Indonesian students. In the past, we didn't have that many records, but I do know our founders at Cranbrook married in 1887. One of their wedding presents was an Indonesian carved screen in a Dutch colonial style, which that was just so long ago. And so I feel like sometimes these like transcontinental global threads can feel so recent, and then you run into something that's so old.
Yeah.
That was not a question, which is why I put my hands down. But I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Indonesia was a Dutch colony for like 350 years. So a lot of the influence, the language, there are similarities in both cultures. Yeah, and then I'm thankful that I was exposed to all of that and be able to kind of hone it all in now that I'm here in America. Yeah.
I had a question about the very first video you shared. I don't know, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I was collaborating with the school where my mom and sister work at, with the students there, and also with Peter. I was there teaching photography and video making. Peter has a background in opera, so he was doing workshops on singing. So through my experience of moving to America and having to speak English to sound more like American, I realized the placement of words is very different than when I speak Indonesian. In speaking Indonesian, it's almost like I'm swallowing my words and I don't have to articulate what it is that I'm saying. So that kind of becomes the inspiration in making that video. And one way that students welcome overseas guests is by learning their national anthems. If they have a guest from China, they would learn like Chinese songs. And it was kind of like, okay, this is the things that you do. How can I utilize this and use that as an inspiration to kind of help me make something, but also show them the process of how I make my work from the initial idea to the completion. So I got to invite all of these students, and all of them were wearing mouth guards that you would put on when you were at the dentist as a way to kind of like help articulate using your tongue, your soft palate, while not relying on your lips. Because like once you isolate your lips, you realize like you need to be doing something else to articulate your words clearly. So it's that mixture of like learning and figuring out inspirations, but also, of course, I'm finding out the discrepancies of the heroic songs of acceptance and realizing, okay, songs are great, but how about the reality? So that's why that almost grotesque, but then also humorous and also casual and also very staged becomes the choice that I made. Yeah.
Were the mouth guards an intervention of your own, or was that just a thing? Because they show up later in some of the other photos, right?
Yeah, it's what I bring in because I grew up wearing braces for 7 years because my first orthodontist was a scam. So I don't know, maybe this is also just my way of like, yeah, I'm used to doing this. So I brought that in, but also to me, going back to how I feel weird having to voice my opinions, and sometimes, and I also feel this way after all of the anti-Asian hate campaign came about. It's almost like, oh, suddenly you're giving me the mic to say something, but if I wasn't allowed before and I wasn't taught how to voice, what do you think will come out of my mouth? You know, so I think that became this like punctum that like this prick that I always carry with me in regards to communication and using words in talking. And I'm also in the spirit of transformation. When I hit 30, I'm 36 now, I was like, okay, you've been shy and quiet for 30 years. Bitch, you better speak up now as you're expiring. So I really like kind of just push myself to feel more comfortable in relying on words, because I do feel like, and this is what I kind of shared earlier in our studio visits, that once I solve a problem, that leads to better tools in asking better questions in making art. So then I just have to be trusting of the process and the courage to really face my fears head on, because the reward of it will be so fulfilling. Yeah. So that's kind of like the whole background of that video, while also like kind of welcoming Peter as an American guest at the student school. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
Hi, Michael.
Leonard, thank you so much. That was absolutely fabulous. I was slowly trying to formulate a question, not sure how I was going to formulate it, until you mentioned that Peter works in opera, because my question was the question that I was so slowly trying to formulate was that there's a kind of operatic imagination in the work. I was thinking of the role of staging that Lynn also observed about the work. I was thinking of telenovela, I was thinking of soap opera, and opera as not as a kind of an imagination of staging that we find in opera, and then the with that staging, the imagination of a certain frozen quality as well. If that makes sense, it's a work in progress, my intuition, but Peter, we have to talk afterwards. I wonder if that makes sense. Could you address that?
It totally makes sense. And I forgot to mention that I got a BA and BFA from my undergrad. BFA is in creative photography, but the BA was in theater. I wanted to move to America, especially California, to learn how to make movies when I was in Indonesia. So I enrolled on this theater program, and I got to America and I was like, oh, this is live theater. This is exactly what I didn't prepare for, because it was kind of a shock at first, because, oh, I'm just surrounded by a bunch of high school graduates who wanted to be famous, while here I am trying to figure out how to communicate my life. So but then I married both, and I found that the medium of photography, especially the film camera, where I set the camera down, I get to create a stage. And I think with that a frozen moment of seeing a photograph is more potent than a full theater production, because it allows reflection from the viewer to insert their own self in seeing what it is that I'm trying to communicate. So I think, yes, you picked up on it. It's, I think I am able to use my theater training and background into my photography, and now I see them both as this way in which I get to make art. Because what I love from my theater building, theater training, is ensemble building that I get to bring to my family. It's like, okay, instead of just spending time on our phones while we don't talk, how about we do something artistic? And I owe a lot of it from the theater program, where ensemble building is like a key in putting up theaters, and then also the interworking of the different departments like set design, lighting, choreography, directing, and acting becomes tools to communicate. So yeah, and I feel like that's when I just didn't have, at the time, I didn't have the nerve to disappoint my mom, telling her that I want to get rid of theater and just pursue photography, because I didn't want to disappoint her. So as a way for them to support me, I basically had to kind of like show them, this is what I learned, this is what I'm learning. Please help me sit and let me exercise lighting on you. Let me exercise all of these different camera settings on you. And that was early on what got us into working together as a family unit. And then I get to expand on it. And, like, I guess the joy of art making is like, once you finish your artwork, you feel that sense of accomplishment where you feel like, oh, I just occupied my full self. I occupied my education. I occupied, my fears and happiness. What's next? How can I build? That's why I got to build my dad wearing a diaper after 10 years, because I present it as a stage to them, and they know, yeah, it doesn't signify who they truly are. We get to sometimes skew reality in the process to make a point. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Leonard. Oh, thank you.